All right, I wanted to present a project I've been hacking on for the past month, which is getting L&D inside of Excel. And I'll explain why someone would ever do that. I want to bring Lightning to the most popular business platform in existence today, which is Microsoft Office Excel. It's installed on hundreds of millions of computers around the world. It's used day to day by all sorts of business people who are doing ad hoc data analysis. It's also abused by business people who are creating databases and creating full-fledged applications within Excel, which it's probably not a great idea. They should probably be using a SQL database, but it's a platform that is so friendly to non-programmers, to non-developers, that they end up becoming developers on the platform. So I thought it was very important that we find a way to have Lightning inside of Excel. And business power users who want to experiment with Lightning, they don't have a client, right? It's either something that is very minimalist and tries to abstract away as much as possible, and that's for like consumers, for like iOS and Android wallets, where you just click once and then you pay. Or you're a developer and you're in the command line and you're using LNCLI and you're getting your data that way. So if we want to have like something in between, right, for power users, I think that was like a missing tool. So what I did is I have L&D bundled into an Excel plugin, and this Excel plugin allows you to take a normal Excel workbook that you create, and then you do setup workbook, and it automatically populates these tabs with data from your L&D node.
Thanks, Matt.
So the L&D node can either be embedded, the one that's embedded inside the plugin, or it can be one that's already running locally because you might have been experimenting with a different wallet or a different UI. Or it can be a remote node because, for example, you might have a BTC Pay server already set up and you want to be able to connect to that. And you could also like share a macaroon with your accountant that's read-only, and then they can get all of the data into Excel like that. So from like a technology perspective, I'm using the gRPC API with C# bindings that I generated, and it works really well. Now, granted, like there's areas that the gRPC API could probably improve, but it's probably a different presentation. Let me do a quick show around. So basically, this is the configuration. So if you want it to be like on mainnet, you can type in mainnet, and then you can hit connect again, and it'll connect to your mainnet node. You could be connecting to a remote host. You currently do have to provide the macaroon and the TLS certificate, but hopefully we'll find ways to make that less painful than it currently is. And then the password for, and you can see it's all very secure, right? It uses advanced font and background being the same color encryption to improve your OPSEC. And then this is just get info from the node. You can see your peers. Some of the next steps I want to have, for example, here is where like you can add a peer from this view. Currently, you still have to do that command line, but I want to have it where the entire L&D API, anything that you could do with it, you can do from within Excel. Just not there yet. This gives you your wallet balances, so your on-chain and your off-chain. I'm going to skip the transactions tab because currently there's a bug in L&D and it'll cause L&D to crash if I do get transactions. So this here you see we have an open channel. I just opened it. It's disappointing that it's inactive because that means we're not going to be able to route any payments today. But nevertheless, that's that view. Pending channels. So I should probably close that inactive channel and open another one. If I close it, it'll show up in one of these tables. And then close channels and payments. Unfortunately, I had a database corruption issue this morning, and so I had to like wipe all my directory and start from scratch, so I don't have 80 payments in here that I did yesterday. And then this view allows you to send payments. So you would go get, probably not that one, let's just do this test one here. And then you paste in the payment request, it decodes it for you. It also queries routes, so I don't get any results from query route right now because I don't have any open channels that are active. But if I did, this would offer up different routes and the different fee that I would pay for it. And then you would hit send payment. This is going to fail, unable to find a path to destination. If it did find one, then it would give you the pre-image here and the kind of the summary of the route that it did end up taking. Yeah, so that's LMD plus XL. Any questions?
How are you running it in Excel? Like WebAssembly, cross-compiled, or?
Yeah, so Excel has several different ways to program it. The immediate user interfacing way to program it is to chain a bunch of functions inside of Excel cells, right? I'm not doing that. The second hardest way to do it is to do a VBA macro. And then you can do a plugin in .NET familiar languages, so like C#. And that's what I'm doing in C#. And so anything that you would have access to in C#, you have access to in this environment, including gRPC, including if I wanted to, I could do like a REST API call to bitcoinaverage.com, so then I can have the current like dollar value of the payment I'm sending. That's definitely something I want to include eventually. Now, to your question about like, how does it actually take this data and then display it? It uses like Excel has an interop API that allows you to change every single thing about an Excel workbook that you can change manually through the UI. So you can change like all of these borders. It's definitely getting created programmatically, so I don't have like a line of code for each border, but it's like a function in there of like create borders.
Do you see this being useful for more like routing nodes? Or?
Plausibly. So I think that something. So right now, like autopilot is very much a work in progress / only beginning. And so if someone's like a data scientist and they're trying to figure out how to improve autopilot, like plausibly they would do that in Excel, but really they should be doing that in like Python or R. And that's something that I've been thinking about as well, is like doing this, except having it go into pandas in Python, so that data scientists who should be thinking about how to optimize routing nodes would be doing that. Now, if someone is like a routing node capitalist, you know, like they're not designing the autopilot algorithm, they're just like an end user of the algorithm and they want to see the profitability of their routing node, then yeah, this would be a great interface for them to log in and see, you know, what's the total routing fees, what's like my Lightning Network rate of return. And this was actually the initial impetus for me creating this. Nick Bhatia was, I was talking about the Lightning Network rate of return with him, and I was like, so have you like calculated, you know, some things? And he was like, well, you know, I don't really have a way of doing that. I'm not a developer. And I was like, oh yeah, you would really benefit from having all of this in Excel, huh? So yes. Any other questions?
I know this is baby steps and everything.
Yeah.
Do you see maybe like a QuickBooks implementation?
Yeah, so for sure. I think that there's a fundamental difference between like payments data and accounting data. They're sort of related, but a double entry bookkeeping system is fundamentally different than a cash system like this. And so really what you would want to have is your LND data is kind of a subledger that gets rolled up to a general ledger that's running in QuickBooks, in NetSuite, in Oracle, and SAP. and transforming that the subledger data from your cash ledger into your accounting, that could be done through Excel. I think it would be better if you have a developer create an integration that directly connects those two. So really I see this more from an operational perspective of someone who is interested in payments per se, not necessarily part of the wider accounting issue. Because like within an accounting department, like you have a treasury group that actually handles the movement of money. And so this would be used by your treasury group, and then your accountants would then have a read-only macaroon that feeds into the actual accounting database for recording double entry transactions. Any other questions?
Just L&D or other things in the future?
Other things in the future for sure. I felt like when I started out, when I saw, gRPC, C#, like it just made sense to go to LND. I think that like C Lightning's architecture is fascinating. It seems to be targeted towards a server environment, and I wanted something where like the person can have their LND node bundled into the plugin so that they can be on the network, just by installing the plugin and opening up and hitting one button to set up the workbook. But yeah, a lot of love for C Lightning, just didn't really fit into this particular use case. Yet, I mean, maybe it'll make sense to have both options. Yeah.
It's kind of like an open question. Like when you were working on this, like was there anything about LND or Lightning that like particularly like, oh, this is like really easy to work with, or this is like really hard to work with? Like some learning there or something?
Definitely more of the latter. But I mean, it's like it was amazing to me when it worked at all, because this is like an experiment on top of an experiment on top of an experiment. So what I found to be easy to work with, like, I was actually surprised that Autopilot was able to get channels open that were routing to YAWS right out of the box. And I was surprised that Neutrino worked out of the box as well, and this is on testnet. And then what I found frustrating from a developer experience point of view was that I'm not entirely, well, there's limitations within Excel for asynchronous behavior. And on top of that, I'm not entirely familiar with the asynchronous capabilities of C#. And then on top of that, like, you don't know if it's, am I not using async correctly? Or is LND screwing something up? And it's kind of a black box in that regard. Some of the error messages are a little opaque. And then I was like debugging my macaroons for a few days because the macaroon moved from 0.4 to 0.5. And the error message didn't really help me with that at all. I thought that I was like not decoding or deserializing the macaroon correctly in C#. So that was frustrating, but that's the cost of doing something that's cutting edge like this. Yeah. Oh, and then there's other weird inconsistencies within the LND API in the gRPC, like pub key. Is it pub_key or is it pub key one word? And like that's not consistent at all. Or if you do like get transactions, it's get transactions, but everything else is like list channels, list peers. And so it's like, all right, we need to have a consistent API. But I get that it's alive, right? It's evolving, and hopefully we get that consistency converging over time, and we're allowed to make breaking changes while it's still in beta. Any other questions before we wrap it up? Yeah.
Could you use the optimization function of Excel to figure out, maybe something with Autopilot?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so Solver and the more advanced features in Excel definitely could be. I feel like that would be part of an ad hoc analysis as you're someone who's trying to figure out a better autopilot algorithm could prototype it in Excel and then actually code it in Go inside of LND. So I think that it would be a really good like playground for prototyping things like that. In terms of like turning it into production code, then you would want to like go into the Go. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing in Excel is like you get all these pretty like charts and graphs and stuff. So I want to take some of these tables and like create visualizations that are dynamic. Just haven't been laying the groundwork for that. All right.